Yeah, thank you all for sharing, and I'm really excited to tell you that what we're talking about today is just extremely powerful. It's a mindset. These are practices that are so powerful that they can transform our relationships. Even if we don't say a single word, because we're going to talk about as we go into everything is how so much of this comes from within ourselves, because we have the power to shape our role in our relationships and how we perceive and approach those relationships and really our life. And in some ways, I think this is really exciting thing, because we do have so much so much power and so much control over ourselves. The flip side of it is that is acknowledging that we don't have power and control over others, the other people in our relationship. And this might seem sad in a way, because wouldn't we want to be able to help and support our loved ones, make them feel a certain way, make them behave a certain way. But it can also be, I think, very liberating, knowing that other people's behaviors, other people's feelings are not our responsibility. And so I really encourage you to kind of think of it that way, that this can be a liberating concept and way of thinking about your relationships with everyone.
Yeah, and that others are not our responsibility, but we are our responsibility, and we have so much power over the way that we show up in relationships and asking for what we want and being able to see the other person. So some of the things we heard was better relationships with family. I can tell you this has transformed my life, that I have better relationships with my family and with my husband. Working with assumptions and judgments, we're totally going to be working on that today. Letting go of conflicts, dealing with anger. I think all of that is a lot of inner work, and some of what we talk about today is going to touch on that, on how we can understand ourselves more deeply to see where our pain is coming from. Work environment and stress, we're going to be giving you a couple of examples from Matt's work and how he's used this in his work. And is there another one? Letting go of conflicts. I think a lot of that, being able to let go and accept, comes from deeply understanding what's happening inside of us. So we're going to be touching a little bit on each of these things today. And we're going to ask you at the end if there's anything we missed, anything you want to share with us. I see also online, Maribel and Nathan are joining and sharing that they want to learn how to communicate in a way that doesn't threaten or attack others, but be loving and compassionate in their communication. And absolutely, we're going to be talking about that today.
Yeah, and just to, I do want to say that this is an overview, this is an introduction, and as much as we would love to be able to get in everything and explain exactly how to do everything and practice it in detail to really teach mastery of it, unfortunately we don't have the time to do that. It is a longer practice, and so this is just kind of that introduction to it. But the way we think a lot about relationships and mental health in general is, at least the way I think about it is it's a lot like physical health and like going to the gym. And we wouldn't expect to go to the gym once and think, I'm good, I'm healthy, I'm fit, I'm done. It really does take a regular practice, and then you see that improvement, you see those changes in yourself. And it's the same thing with this. It is a practice, it is a commitment, and over time you do see the effects becoming greater and greater. And that's a wonderful thing, because you don't necessarily have to do it every time, every interaction. But when you choose to, then you can see that effect, and it just becomes greater and greater the more comfortable and you are with these skills. And so that that's an amazing thing. And so just to kind of give you an overview of how this is going to look in our presentation today, we're going to share our screen here. There we go. Can you guys see our screen here? Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, and so the first, this is basically, our talk is going to be divided into 3 sections. The first section, we're going to talk about how we see conflict, like myths and expectations we might have as conflict, and then we're going to kind of explain, how that works and how we can see this a little bit differently. The second section is going to be understanding a new mindset for connection, and this is drawing primarily from nonviolent communication, if we're familiar with that. And then the third section, we're going to learn how to ask for what you want. which I think is such an amazing skill. It's incredibly powerful. And so we are going to touch onto it and kind of show you how to incorporate that, in your own relationships. And each section, we kind of have it mapped out to be about an hour. We might, that timing may change a little bit, but at the end of each section, we'll be taking a little break so that if you have questions, that's going to be the time that we'll address them. So, if you have questions, please hold on to them, write them down, or if you're in chat online, you can send them in the chat, and then we'll address them at the end of that section. So at least a few times, we'll pause and look for those. And so that's pretty much, I think, what we can expect. And I'll turn it over to Sunaina to get started.
Are there any questions though before we begin on the format and what to expect?
What was the third one again?
The third thing that we're going to be talking about today is asking for what you want. So how do we, when we're in conflict, how do we speak with compassion and understanding and communicate in a way that's not attacking, but is connecting and asking for what we want? Because this work is not about just seeing the good in everyone and rolling over and let everybody doing whatever they want to us. It's about empowering us to ask for what we want in relationships as well. We'll barely be touching on that because it's a huge topic, but we will be touching on it a little bit. Any other questions? Okay, so I'd love to just dive in and talk about the myths about conflict. And I think this gets to what one of you were sharing earlier about having that anxiety about conflict and confrontation. And so some of the myths that we have that are pretty prevalent in our culture are conflicts are avoidable. If we figure out the perfect relationship, if we figure out how to communicate in the perfect way, we never have to be in conflict again. And this is absolutely not true. If you think about any relationship you have, whether it's at work or with friends or with family or with romantic partners, this is two different people who are trying to go through life together. There is no way that you are going to see the world the same way every single time. Even if you were the same person, right? Even if if I have conflicts within myself all the time. And so conflicts are not avoidable. And that's one thing, at least for me, that gave me some relief. Like, when they pop up, I don't have to be so worried because this is natural in relationships. It's a natural part of trying to go through life with other people. The second myth is that conflicts are bad. And this is a big one. And I know I still struggle with this sometimes. I've gotten a lot better. But we're raised with, if conflict happens, it means the relationship is bad or something's wrong or one person is right, the other person is wrong. We end up becoming afraid of conflict, of dreading conflict because we think they're bad. And what I would love for us to start doing is shifting our perspective to seeing conflict not as something to be avoided or something to be afraid of, but something that actually is a gift. Because what conflict tells us is, hey, there's something here that there's a little bit of something we don't understand about the other person or something we don't understand about the other person's behavior and situation. This is an incredible opportunity to learn that person more deeply. When we're talking about romantic relationships, it's this precious gift. Wow, I get to dive deeper and understand my partner at a deeper level, for instance. I actually have a friend in the Bay Area who tells me that every time he gets in a conflict with his wife, he gets excited because he knows it's now an opportunity to go deep and to understand himself better and to understand his wife better. So if we can start shifting the way we see conflict as an opportunity for a deeper connection, they're actually really powerful. And that's one way to start addressing our anxiety about conflict. The third big myth is that they're about who's right or wrong. When we get into a conflict, the point of the conflict is to figure out who is right and who is wrong. And the thing is, when we spend time trying to win an argument, trying to pick apart the other person's logic and tell them where they're wrong, we are missing the entire gift of conflict, which is digging deeper to understand each other at a deeper level. So this arguing and trying to figure out who's right and wrong is a very surface level engagement. And we're missing the entire gift of diving deeper so that we can have deeper connections with our partners or our friends or our family members. So hopefully we'll be able to dive into more of these things throughout the conversation today. But I would love to also now, before we dive into some of the actual material, to spend some time with some self-reflection with ourselves, because there are 4 really common ways that people deal with conflict. And I want us to spend some time in introspecting and trying to figure out, what is our strategy usually when we have conflict? What do we do when conflict arises in our lives? So the first very common strategy is avoidance. If there's an opportunity for conflict, we just avoid it. And I know Matt and I have spoken about how we've seen this in some of our families sometimes, where if there's something coming up, people kind of go the other way and just don't want to talk about it and just avoid any discussion that's going to raise conflict. So that's one perspective, one way we deal with it. The second way we deal with conflict is submission. And I am totally guilty of this. This was me growing up. Submission is just, oh, you're right, I was wrong. Or, oh, you want to go to dinner here and I want to go to dinner? Fine, we'll go to dinner where you want to go to. Or, I'm so sorry if what I said made you upset. It's my fault. Please forgive me. Submission, you're always just giving in. So maybe this sounds familiar to some of you. The third way we deal with conflict is the opposite. It's domination. It's asserting ourselves and saying, I don't care what you think, this is what I want and I'm not budging. I don't care if you want to go to that dinner place. It's a horrible place. This is a better place. We're going there. Just asserting yourself and always coming up as the victor in the conflict. And the fourth way is compromise. So for compromise, an example would be if you and a friend are trying to figure out where to go for a vacation, and one wants to go to Hawaii and the other one wants to go to New York, and you can't decide where to spend your 1 week. And so you decide, let's just split it. We'll spend half the week in Hawaii, half the week in New York. And all of these are very common strategies, but there are downsides to each of them. So with avoidance, clearly what's happening is nobody is getting their needs met. There is this underlying issue that nobody wants to address, and it just lurks and it lurks and it lurks to come up later. That's not healthy. With submission, if I'm always just giving in and letting the other person get their way, very sneaky things happen. One is, well, the obvious thing is I'm ignoring myself. I'm ignoring my own needs. I'm not caring about myself. I'm not honoring the fact that I'm a human being who needs things as well. Also, resentment can start building up. As much as you think I'm submitting because I love the other person and just I want them to be happy or whatever it is you tell yourself, there's a level of resentment that starts building up as you give in. And you all might even start thinking, that person owes me something. I'm giving in so much, they owe me something. And that person has no idea they owe you something, because all you do is give in and say everything's okay. Domination, clearly you're ignoring the other person's needs, and that can build up resentment and cause long-term harm. And with compromise, this one's a little sneaky, because we say relationships are all about compromise. But compromise means there are 2 losers. Both of you guys are losing in some way. Now we're only spending 3 days in Hawaii and 3 days in New York, and is that enough time to really enjoy your vacation, right? So with compromise, both people are giving in. Both people are losing just a little bit.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, it's like you're equally dissatisfied.
Yeah, in some ways. You're equally satisfied in some ways, but also equally dissatisfied. And so these are the 4 ways we usually use to address conflict. And I'm just wondering, by a show of hands, who kind of resonates with each of these? Choose one that kind of feels like your dominant way of dealing with conflict. And I'd like to see a show of hands, even in the chat. How many of you identify with the avoidance strategy, just avoid conflict? Can you see? I can't really see how many hands are going up.
Okay,
sorry. Oh, a lot of people. Okay. How many of you guys resonate with the submission? So I see somebody online saying one of their spouses do avoidance. Submission strategy. Okay, quite a few. And domination strategy, yeah. And the compromise strategy. Okay,
Can I say
a couple
something?
of you. Was there a question?
Yes, I feel like in different areas of my life, I use different ones.
I can totally see that. Like at work, you do something else. With your partner, you do something else. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
It's all of them, yeah.
All of them. Yeah, that's why so many hands went up.
My boss, I'll avoid it. With certain coworkers, I'll try to dominate. And like with my ex-husband, it was submission. That's why he's an ex.
Yeah, that's a great point. We might use all of these strategies in different cases. For me, I know that my overwhelming strategy was submission, but I can see how it depends on the context for sure. So thank you for sharing that. And I hope you guys heard that these are very common, and yet there are drawbacks to them, right? People aren't both getting their needs met. There could be resentment building up. Problems aren't getting addressed, so on and so forth. So what I would love to introduce to you today is the other way of resolving conflict, which is collaboration. In collaboration, we are going beneath the surface to understand what the needs are for each person, and then figuring out a new strategy that's a win-win for both. For instance, if we talk about the Hawaii versus New York example, where are we going to go for our holiday for a week? We could go back and forth fighting, no, I want to go to Hawaii, no, I want to go to New York, and just pushing and pulling. Or we can ask, okay, what needs of yours are you hoping to meet by going to Hawaii? Let's dig a little bit deeper. And so if I'm the one who wants to go to Hawaii, I can say, well, I want to go to Hawaii because I want to see beauty and I want to have rest and relaxation. That's what I'm looking for. And then I can say, okay, for you who wants to go to New York, just say it's my husband, what are the needs underneath your reasoning for going to New York? And he may say, I want excitement and adventure. Now we can say, okay, I want relaxation and beauty. You want excitement and adventure. Can we come up with a solution where both of our needs are getting met? And we may talk about it, and this takes creativity and it takes time. But once we're at their level, we have a whole bunch of possibilities. How do we go on vacation where we can get both beauty, relaxation, and adventure and excitement met? Maybe we choose a third location that has both. Or maybe we say, let's go to Hawaii and I'll go to the spa while you go hiking. Or I'll relax at home while you go snorkeling. Or we choose an activity that's both relaxing and adventurous. But now we're getting our juices flowing on how to resolve this conflict in a way that we're both winning, instead of going back and forth and one person sacrificing their needs. And the amazing thing about collaboration is, well, the part that's necessary to reach a place of collaboration is deeper understanding. And that is what we're going to be talking about today. How do we get to this place of deeper understanding so that we can have collaboration with our conflicts? So for a quick recap before I open the floor for questions, you have the power to transform your relationships. As Matt was saying, this is a powerful first step that you guys are here because you can transform your relationship. And I ask you guys to have faith that that's possible as you practice some of the skills that we're going to be sharing today. It might not happen right away, but it does work if you keep at it and keep practicing. Also, conflicts are opportunities for connection. So we're used to thinking of conflicts as being bad, and I would love for us to start thinking of conflicts as being beautiful opportunities to better understand the other people in our lives. And finally, when we want to resolve conflict using collaboration, it really does depend on understanding. So we're going to dive into that understanding.
And that understanding is of ourselves and the other person.
Yeah, it's understanding the other person as well as understanding ourselves, which we're going to be talking about in just a second. So I'd love to pause here and ask if there are what questions there are so far.
Want to put up your hand? Anyone want to ask something? Go ahead.
Yes. What's your name?
Ricardo Davila.
Ricardo. Yes, please.
What if the parent is a controlling person and it wants their way or the highway. You know what I mean?
So what if the partner is a controlling person who wants their way or the highway? That was the question. So at the end of the workshop today, we're going to be talking about being able to ask for what we want. But before we are able to say, you know, before we ask for what we want, like the way to not get it is to go to our partner and say, you are so controlling and it's always your way or the highway, and that's not fair. You might be able to make that person feel guilty or angry or ashamed of themselves, but it's not going to cause connection and compassion between you, or it's going to be less likely to. And so the way to address that situation, and it might be a long-term process, is really exploring what's happening for you. What is it inside? Is it that you're wanting more respect? Is it that you're wanting more choice, wanting more care? You want to be seen or heard? Really understanding what's happening inside of you and how it makes you feel. When you're not heard, how does it make you feel? That self-connection has to happen first. And then we can go talk to our partners and find out the needs beneath their behavior. Why do they always want to be in control? What is going on? And really entering into the conversation to understand that person. Because what we're going to talk about today is there's no right, nobody is right or wrong. Everybody is just doing the best they can to meet their needs. And when you can understand the needs that your partner is trying to meet by deciding on the restaurant or deciding on the movie that you're going to see or whatever it is that you're deciding, then you can come to them with understanding and show them that you're interested in them and their needs. And that opens up a dialogue for connection. If we stay at the you're too controlling, that connection is harder to do. If we go deeper and understand where they're coming from and show them that we care and that we're curious, that opens the opportunity for communication.
Yeah, no, and this is absolutely something we're going to go into more later on. But one important point is that we're also, doesn't mean we have to agree with someone else. Just because we're understanding them doesn't mean we're agreeing with them.
Yes.
And we can still, come from the place where we're trying to meet our own needs too, and making requests that honor that.
Like, for instance, if the partner is controlling, and I don't know why, if the partner wants to make all the decisions because the partner feels like their life is out of control, and being able to make the decisions in the relationship help them feel a sense of ease and a sense of order and a sense of peace, we can understand that we all want order and ease and peace in our lives, but we don't have to agree with the strategy they're using to get those needs met. We don't have to agree with you making the decisions about everything. And we can have a conversation of how do we get your needs for ease and what were the other things I said? Order met, and also honor my needs for choice and respect. So we don't have to agree with what people are doing to understand them. And we'll talk more about that. We'll have more concrete examples later on, if that wasn't clear.
One more quick question, and maybe this is something you see here.
Yes, so the question from an online participant says, how do you collaborate with someone who wants something but doesn't know why? How do we meet their need if they don't know it themselves? For example, they think they want New York, but are unable to reflect and realize they want adventure. It's a great question. We honestly get similar questions like this all the time. And at the end of the last section, we're going to be talking about making requests. And you can make requests of others, like, would you be willing to go to Hawaii and go snorkeling as your adventure? Or you can make requests of, would you be willing to spend like 10 minutes trying to understand what's underneath? And, I've learned this process. I have this needs sheet, which you guys have. I'm going to explain it in a second. I have this needs sheet. Would you be willing to explore it together? Because I really want to understand what's going on for you. So you can make a request for deeper connection.
And I think this is something we'll go into more.
And we'll go into this more at the end, yes. I see another question, yeah.
So
what's your name?
Mira.
Mira, hi.
Where do you draw that line? Because obviously, like in a relationship, it does get to the point where if one person's really trying to be the person coming to the table, like obviously these things do take time and like stuff, but there has to be a line somewhere where you're like, okay, well, this person is not not willing to work with me. So where's kind of that like line in which we kind of say, hey, there's really not much we can do. We can only control ourselves. They're kind of like, I guess, a lost cause to say.
It's a great question. So just to paraphrase, we can do so much work in relationships and show up and try to connect and try to invite people to have deeper connection and to solve these issues. And where is the line where you say this isn't working and walk away? Okay. That's a very, very kind of, it depends on you question. You get to have the power to decide how much effort you want to put in and how much you're willing to work. And it all depends on what you want. And by understanding yourself and what you want, you're that much more clear about the steps you're willing to take. Somebody might decide that this is worth the rest of their lives to keep trying. And others may decide, I want something else, and communicate to their partner that I want more depth in this. And I've been trying, and I see that I'm getting this message that there isn't a willingness to go deeper. And I just want you to know that it's a deal breaker for me, because I want a deeper relationship. I want connection and understanding. I want a lifelong journey of growth together. And I can't see that happening if we're not willing to be able to connect in this deeper way. And and you can also say I'm really open to hearing what it feels like for you to hear this. You know, I'm not putting judgment on you. What does it feel like to hear this? Because I'm really wanting more connection and understanding in this relationship. And I've been trying and haven't been able to see it. Do you have suggestions of how we can have more connection and understanding? And how much effort you put in is really up to what you're wanting. Right?
Yeah. And I think that the key thing to think about, and I think someone had mentioned this earlier about, feeling like, we're holding on to like resentment and anger, with relationships. I think a lot of that comes from feeling like we don't have a choice. Like you were saying, like, it's someone lost cause, but I'm still going to try and make it work. We have that choice if we want to try and make that effort and try and make it work, or if we're going to move on. And I think the key of being able to let that go and accept that is by understanding it is a choice, by approaching it as a choice. And that's something that we'll also, I think, go into a little bit more later on. But I think these are really, really great questions. Thank you.
Yeah.
We have one more question.
Sure.
Chanel.
And then my question is kind of opposite of the first one. What if your partner is super submissive and won't?
What if your partner is super submissive and won't speak up for themselves?
Yeah, for instance, my partner won't even tell me if there's a problem, so I don't know ever, until I have to make check-ins once a week just to find out that I'm in trouble.
Do you have an answer? I can try and answer
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah? Okay. First of all, I think just, again, connecting with yourself and understanding how this affects your life. What are you needing more of? Maybe it's trust. Like you feel like you can't really trust the time you spend together because you don't know if something's underneath the surface. Maybe it's more ease. You just want to know when things are wrong. Maybe it's support. You want to be able to support your partner. And if they're never telling you what's going wrong, you can't support them. So first, taking that step to understand what's going on within you. And again, we're going to practice this in a moment. And then try to understand maybe where they're coming from. Why do they use this submission tactic? And this can either be you trying to guess on your own, or even asking them. I realized that on Monday I said something that really hurt your feelings, but I didn't know about it until Thursday. And I'm wondering, that makes me feel kind of sad because I want to be able to support you. I want to be able to be there for you. I'm wondering what's going on, like for you. Why don't you tell me right away what's going on, and trying to understand the needs beneath their behavior. Again, you don't have to agree with how they deal with things, but we can at least connect to the underlying needs that they're trying to meet. And again, we're going to practice this in a second. Then you're opening the opportunity for dialogue. This whole process is about dialogue and collaboration. And it starts with empathy and understanding. Moving from our, oh, you're such a, and I'm not saying you're saying this, but moving from why can't you're so spineless, why can't you stand up, and like you're ruining this relationship, and like all these judgments, to, oh, you're scared to bring things up because you're worried that I'm going to get mad at you like your dad got mad at you growing up for bringing up problems. And so you don't feel necessarily safe enough to bring up this stuff. And my love, I just want to tell you, you're safe with me. I want to hear these things. And now you're addressing the deeper cause. Does that answer your question? Does that make sense? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dahlia. I'm getting a message that we should repeat the questions from the audience. That last question was, what do we do if our partner doesn't tell us when something's wrong until later? They use a submission tactic a lot, and it's affecting the relationship. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. How do you guys feel? Do you want a short break to go to the bathroom and stretch your legs and things like that?
Or do we want to move on? Raise your hand if you're ready to move on.
Okay.
Okay. All right, cool.
Okay. All right. So in this next section, I'm going to be bringing up typical judgments we have about our partners, or that they may have about us, or our friends, or our family members, whatever. And so I know for some people, we're in relationships that are really challenging, and hearing some of these judgments, it may be hard. It may be kind of triggering in a way. And so I just invite you, if you need to walk around and take a break and take care of yourself, please do so. But we are going to be using phrases that people might say in these conflicts and arguments. Okay. Wait a second. Just going to pause for a second. Okay, thank you. All right, so this perspective, my friends, has changed my life. And I love it so much that we are spending this time sharing it with you. Really changed the way I see the world, helped me have more compassion for myself, helped me have more connection and closeness for my family, and helped me understand the beauty in humanity, really see the beauty in humanity. And it's this perspective that was put forth by Marshall Rosenberg, who was a clinical psychologist who actually quit his practice because he thought that clinical psychology focused more on what was wrong with people rather than really understanding their beauty. And so Marshall Rosenberg studied conflict and what makes people help others versus hurt others, and started this philosophy called nonviolent communication, which I want to give you an overview of right now. And so this idea that Marshall put forth seems simple, but it's pretty deep. And he said that everything we have ever done or ever will do is to meet an underlying human need. So everything we've ever done or said in our lives, everything our partners and friends and family members have said and done, and everything we will ever do and ever say is to meet, or can be seen as an attempt to meet, underlying human needs. And the beauty of this is these underlying human needs are universal. Whether you are, I like to use this example, a grandma in China, an inner city kid in Chicago, a student in college, an immigrant trying to cross the border, whoever you are, everything you're doing is to meet the same underlying human needs. We may have different ways of going about meeting these needs, but the underlying needs are the same. And when we can start seeing this in our partners, in our friends, and our family members, that's when we can start having compassion and understanding and connection with others. And so I wanted to practice a little bit in seeing the world in this way by giving you guys a few examples. And for this, I'd like you to turn to your needs sheet, which I realize I haven't shared with the online group. Let me pull that up really quickly. So go ahead and pull out your needs sheet that you got. Club. guys. And I'm gonna share it with the chat. Okay, so yeah, let's pull out click on your needs sheet. Click on the link I sent you if you're in the online chat to open up the needs and values. And for those of you, make sure you've turned to the paper that says needs and values at the top. And we're just gonna practice. So let me see, did I write down? Oh yeah. So just if everything we do is to meet an underlying need, what needs do you think we're trying to meet if one of us goes to the gym like 4 times a week?
We should
What's
say,
that?
so it's actually the second page on this.
Actually, the link I sent, it's just on the.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I think it's okay. So if you look at needs and values, if I go to the gym like 4 times a week, what needs do you think I'm trying to meet? And you can say it in the chat or you can just say it out loud. I'm gonna guess it.
Well-being.
Physical well-being. What else?
Movement.
Movement. We're trying to get our needs met for movement. What else?
Care, self-care,
Self-care.
stimulation,
Yeah.
Stimulation.
peace of mind.
Peace of mind.
Higher self-esteem.
So self-esteem, maybe self-acceptance, self-respect.
To see and be seen.
Beauty.
To see and be seen, beauty, yeah.
Maybe
Nobody's, what was that?
support. Oh, we're saying it at the same time. Sorry.
Self-respect.
Self-respect. Nobody's gonna say fun.
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah.
No.
Exactly. I gave this talk somewhere else and somebody said fun and I was like, I wish I felt fun going to the gym. But yeah, you can see again that everything we do is to meet an underlying need. Another example, what about when we're watching TV? What needs are we trying to meet when we watch TV?
Relaxation.
Relaxation, what else?
Stimulation. Stimulation.
Stimulation,
Peace of mind.
peace of mind, yeah. Maybe some of us want adventure. So we watch things like Game of Thrones and people flying on dragons.
Excitement.
Excitement.
Education.
Oh, for fun.
For fun,
Fun,
there,
yeah,
that one.
yeah.
There you go.
That's a big one. Right?
Anybody from the online group want to share any guesses?
For joy, for
Learning.
Maybe learning if we watch documentaries or something. Sure, there you go. I think you guys are getting that. What about if we go to dinner with our friend? What need could we be trying to meet?
Excitement.
hunger,
Self-expression.
Fun.
Longing.
Belonging. I see online somebody saying connection. Fun. What was the last one?
Communication.
Communication. Yeah.
for fun.
See? Fun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Yeah.
yeah.
So our relationships. So our relationships help us get these needs met as well, right? We go to dinner and we have fun, we have intimacy, connection, belonging, companionship, so on and so forth. And finally, here's, if we're gonna be practicing, here's a little bit of a harder one. Imagine you're having a conversation with your partner or your friend and an argument breaks out, and in the middle of this argument, they just hang up on you. They just hang up on you. What needs do you think they were trying to meet with that behavior?
Peace.
Self-expression.
Awareness.
Peace. So I'm not, right now I'm hurting. I'm not feeling peaceful. I need some peace. I'm just going to hang up.
Self-expression.
Self-expression. I just want you to know how angry you're making me right now. So by slamming this phone, you will see my anger. I'll be able to express myself.
Awareness.
In what way?
In like if they need to be aware that, hey, they're hurting you. That's
So
why
communication. To communicate to them that that they're hurting us. Yeah.
Per-
else? Anybody online? Oh, self-care. So Dahlia online is saying self-care. This is too hard for me. I need to take care of myself. I need my peace, and I'm going to take care of myself by hanging up the phone. Yeah. Respect. I'm not getting it from you, so I'm going to go elsewhere. Exactly. So we're getting this idea. We might not agree that our partner hung up on us, but we can maybe understand what was happening for them when they did that.
I was actually thinking more before I say something disrespectful to you.
Oh, so to protect you. So out of respect for you.
Maybe authenticity, maybe?
Authenticity?
Yeah, you know.
Sure. And I just want to repeat for the people online that somebody said, maybe out of respect for you, I'm hanging up so I don't say anything that's hurtful or harmful. Great, so you guys are getting it. And the cool thing about our bodies is that we have like these inbuilt sensors for when our needs are being met or not being met. Our bodies tell us, can anybody guess what that is?
Feelings.
Exactly. So you can turn to your feelings sheet and see that. So for people who are online, you just have to scroll down to see the feelings sheet on the link I sent you. When our needs, and let me actually advance the screen.
Can you change it so I can see what it looks like
Yes, like that.
for us?
I don't know how to do that. Okay, oh, got it. Okay, that's much better. All right, so yeah, feelings are signals from our bodies that our needs are or are not being met. So it's a cause and effect thing. So if you guys look on the screen that I'm sharing right now, feelings are a direct outcome of our needs being met or not met. So for instance, if we have a need for belonging, for instance, and our partner comes home with flowers and tells us, you know, you're so special to me and I'm so glad we're together and I'm just so happy to be with you. Our need for belonging might get met, which in turn will make us feel pleasant feelings. So if you look at the top part of your sheet, those are all of the positive feelings associated with our needs being met. On the other hand, if our partner says, I just can't talk to you right now, this is really hard, or if our friend forgets to invite us, let's get another example, if our friend forgets to invite us to a dinner party that they're hosting, then our need for belonging is not met, and as a direct result, we feel unpleasant feelings. So every time we have an experience of feelings, we can think of it as, wow, there's some need inside of me that is being met or not met right now. And so let's think about that a little bit. Like the last time, imagine you, let me see, what example can I give? When you have a little baby puppy in your lap and it starts licking your hand and it's clearly happy to be with you, I'm guessing your needs for warmth and maybe compassion and comfort are being met. And what would you be feeling with this puppy who's licking your fingers in your lap? What feelings could come up? Let's look on the sheet and see if we can choose some.
Love.
I didn't hear that.
Love.
Overjoyed.
Love, overjoyed.
Blissful.
Blissful.
Happy.
Happy.
Tickled.
Tender. We're seeing somebody online saying tender. Tickled.
Cheerful.
Cheerful. Maybe content, maybe.
Mellow.
Mellow. Okay, so you guys get the idea. When our needs are met, all these beautiful, pleasant feelings arise. What if mama, is this a good example? What if the mama dog comes in, bites your hand, and takes the puppy away? And now your feelings of safety, of acceptance, of trust, belonging are not being met. And when they're not met, what feelings come up for you?
Anger.
Anger.
Enraged. Furious.
All of the anger words, enraged, furious, maybe scared. I don't know if I feel safe, and so now I feel fear. Embarrassment.
Aching.
Flustered.
You did. Sorry, I can't hear those. When everybody talks at once, it's hard for me to hear.
Flustered.
Flustered.
Flustered, okay. Flustered, surprised, in pain, sadness. Yeah, all of these negative feelings. So once again, those feelings can be seen as coming from, oh, what needs of mine were not met in this moment? So we're trying to see this connection between feelings and needs. Anything else before we move on? Okay. And so if you guys can look on the screen, I love this diagram because it tells us where we usually live. We usually live from the neck up, in between our 2 ears, in our brain, analyzing, diagnosing, judging what's right and what's wrong, what's good and bad. And we live there because we're conditioned to live there. Our bodies lead us to live there. Our society leads us to live there, and we see it all around us. What should people be doing? What shouldn't they be doing? What's good? What's bad? What's right? What's wrong? We hear it all the time, and we're conditioned. What this whole process invites us to do is to go beneath that surface. Instead of living only here in the superficial right, wrong, good, bad, can we go down and listen to our bodies? What are we feeling, and what are we needing? And this space, when we live from this space, it can allow for more connection, understanding, and collaboration. And as you see from the diagram, the feelings, the heart, are connected to the needs. So anytime needs are met or not met, it sends a signal to our heart and we feel something. So this is the practice that we're gonna do today, is moving from up here to our bodies.
Yeah, and this is the space, where we can transform our relationships. It gets easier and easier the more you do. Some of you may already be familiar with some of these concepts, and so it might be something that you can kind of slip into a little bit more easily. And even if it's something that's new to you, it can have an immediate effect on how you're seeing your relationship. So I think this is a really exciting idea.
Mm-hmm. And hopefully we'll be able to show you a little bit of the power of that right now with an example. So imagine, think about the relationship that you want, whether it's a partner, or it's a friend, or it's a coworker, a colleague, whatever it is. And you go to this person, you call this person up to ask for some help with something, and you're totally expecting to be received with warmth and understanding, and sure, I can help. But instead, what happens is the person you're asking for help snaps at you, says something like, why can't you just do it yourself? Something similar, other harsh things, and then tries to change the subject. So in this case, we are human beings. It is very natural for us to come up with a bunch of judgments of this behavior and of this person. We may say things to ourselves like, wow. So we either say these things out loud to that person, or even if we don't say a word, if we say it internally, it's still coming up. These judgments are coming up. So we could say, wow, what's your problem? There's no reason for you to respond that way. What's your problem? We may say something like, you're being really rude right now. Or we may say something like, you're being a horrible partner or colleague or friend or whatever it is that this person is. And all of these things are judgments, and all of these things are very natural. They happen all the time. Even if you've practiced this for years, these come up. And this is the way we usually respond to conflict, with these judgments. And there are some drawbacks to responding in this way. So if I actually do say this out loud, for instance, if I say any of these things to the person that I'm talking to, it's going to be perceived as a threat to ourselves. If I say, what's your problem? You're being rude, you're a horrible partner, that other person is going to feel threatened. Their sense of self is going to feel threatened. And the way human beings respond to threats is fight, flee, or freeze. Those are the three things that we do. And so this other person might decide to fight. They might decide to say, what do you mean, what's my problem? What's your problem? You're the one who's being really rude right now, so on and so forth. And now you're fighting, and there's not that space for connection and understanding. The friend may instead choose to flee. They may say, I can't have this conversation right now. I have to go, and I'll talk to you later, and they'll hang up the phone. Or they may flee internally from this relationship. They may feel like they're withdrawing. They can no longer trust the relationship, just disconnecting from the relationship. Or they might freeze. They might say, not know how to respond. And so they end up saying something like, you know, you're right. I'm so sorry. That was horrible of me. And now they're feeling shame and they're submitting and they're not showing up in their full power and their full presence. And even if I don't say these words out loud, these judgments out loud, at least internally, if I'm thinking these things, I've got distance from this person that is an important person in my life. I'm thinking, wow, this person's a horrible person, or they're being horrible right now. All of these reactions cause disconnection. And so they're not ideal ways to respond when our goal is connection, understanding, compassion, collaboration, and all of the things that we're talking about today. So luckily there are other ways to respond instead of just these judgments, and it involves understanding, it involves going beneath the surface that I spoke about earlier and connecting to feelings and needs. And the first thing you would do in this situation is check in with yourself. Have empathy, understanding, and compassion for yourself by thinking, what was I feeling in that moment? What feelings came up for me in that moment? Okay, can any of you, if somebody responded to you in this way, you call them up and they kind of snap at you when you ask for help, how do you think you would be feeling? Why don't you look at the feelings list and throw out some examples of what you might be feeling?
Bothered.
Sorry?
Bothered.
Bothered?
Dejected.
Irritated.
Aggravated. Angry.
Irritated, aggravated, angry,
Annoyed.
annoyed,
Contempt.
alarmed or surprised, contempt,
Confused.
confused, yeah,
Detached.
detached, yeah. So there you go. So that would be the first step, is like, oh, what did I feel when I heard them say that to me? And I have a couple of examples up here. Alarmed or rattled, yeah. And I have some examples up here of what I thought. Like, first of all, surprised, because I wasn't expecting that. Hurt, and also sad. Maybe that's how I would respond. And so really connecting and acknowledging those feelings.
You know, but you can also feel relief when they hang up on you sometimes, you know? It could be relieving.
Yeah, so everybody who goes through the situation could be feeling completely different things. This is just one example, but yeah, it could be if they try to change the subject and hang up on you, that you feel relief. Yeah, but for this example, let's just go with surprised, hurt, and sad. Okay. And then the next step is, you know, every time we have a feeling, it's because a need of ours is or is not being met. In this case, these are unpleasant feelings, feeling hurt, feeling sad. And so we can look to see what needs of mine were not met by the way they responded to me. Anybody want to take some guesses? If you turn to the needs sheet side and try to see what needs were not being met by the way he responded to me.
Compassion.
You're wanting compassion and you didn't get it.
Comfort.
Some comfort from our support, yeah.
Support.
I was wanting support. Mm-hmm.
Self-expression.
I was wanting to be able to be comfortable in how I was expressing myself, self-expression, and not have this backlash, yeah.
Appreciation.
Appreciation for my role in your life, yeah.
Love.
Some love, yeah, some love.
Respect.
Respect, exactly. So again, every time we feel something, it's because a need is not being met or is being met. So in this case, the needs could be things like support, trust, warmth. I was wanting to know that I could trust that I could be open with what I was needing. I was wanting to be received in warmth, and I was wanting some support. I didn't get any of those. And of course, because of that, I feel hurt and I feel sad. So once we've really connected with what we've understood about ourselves, a couple of powerful things happen. First, we now have self-empathy and compassion for ourselves. Sometimes we start going to self-blame. Oh, I shouldn't have asked. It was wrong of me. I should have been more considerate. But in this way, we're having compassion for what we need as human beings. We all need support and understanding and warmth. So this is a huge part in all of the work we're doing, is first connecting with yourself and understanding what's going on underneath. The other powerful thing that happens is I'm starting to take ownership of my needs. Oftentimes in our lives, we're used to blaming other people for the way we feel. You made me feel this way. Your actions caused this pain in me. And on and on and on. The truth is, nobody is the cause of our feelings. They might be the stimulus of our feelings, but the cause of our feelings is our own needs. Somebody else in that situation may not have felt hurt and sad because they weren't needing warmth in that moment. They weren't needing support in that moment. The reason I felt that is because I had those needs. And so we start shifting this blaming other people to how do I take ownership of my needs, and how do I make sure that I'm taking care of myself to make sure I get those needs met. So it's a subtle shift, but it's a powerful shift, and it has been powerful for me as well. So that all comes from the self-connection practice. Once we've connected with ourselves, we might have some curiosity about the other person. What was happening for them when they snapped at me? And so we can start having curiosity. What was he feeling? So what do you guys think? When he snapped at me when I asked for help,
Maybe he was upset that something happened. Maybe something that we didn't know happened.
maybe he's upset for some reason. Yeah. What else could he be feeling when he snapped at me?
Animosity.
Animosity. I heard tired. Did somebody say tired?
Yes.
Yes. So he might have been tired. He might have been upset.
Was
Feeling
that,
animosity for some reason.
was that meant?
Resentment for some reason. Somebody online is saying overwhelmed. Another person said hangry. So maybe they're irritated and angry because they're hungry and haven't had food. Yeah. Yeah, so we can start getting curious. What was happening for the other person? And for me, the examples I put up here is maybe he's feeling overwhelmed. Maybe he's feeling tired. Maybe he's feeling tense. But any of those other guesses you guys have could have worked as well. And now again, every time there's a feeling, it's because an underlying need is being met or not met. These are unpleasant feelings. And so what needs do you think were not met for him? What was he needing in that moment, potentially, that led him to feel this way?
Peace.
Peace.
Maybe maybe we weren't giving him what he felt like was respect. Maybe.
Okay, so maybe he was sensing something in the way we were speaking that made him think he wasn't being respected. Sure.
Maybe he needed connection.
Or he felt that we were ignoring his needs.
Yeah, so what were those needs going to be? Like maybe his need for appreciation?
Yeah.
Maybe his need for rest. You guys said tired. Maybe he just needed rest in that moment. Again, this has nothing to do with us and everything to do with what was happening inside of him. He was needing rest.
Connection.
He was needing connection, and instead of getting connection, we asked him for a favor. Sure. So he was needing something in that moment. The ones that I came up with was he was tired because he was needing rest. He was needing some space. Maybe he had a rough day, and he was needing some support. So he wasn't getting these things maybe throughout the day, maybe from our conversation. And because of that, he felt a certain way. And because of that, that led to his behavior of snapping at us. Now notice, not once are we saying, it's okay for you to snap at me. It's okay for you to treat me this way. All we're saying is, what was underneath? Can we understand him at some deeper level? And when we do this, cool things happen. The first thing that happens is we take things less personally. His behavior has nothing to do with me and everything to do with the fact that he had pain and suffering inside of him. He was tired. He was overwhelmed. He needed rest. He needed support and space. So now we're moving away from a place of blame where I'm blaming myself and knowing that everybody else's reactions in this world are because of what's happening inside of them. This has been huge for me personally in being able to let go of responsibility for the way other people feel. They're feeling the way they feel because of what's going on inside of them, and it has nothing to do with me. The other cool thing that happens is that we can start noticing the other's pain. If we're stuck in judgment, you're being rude, how dare you, what's your problem? There's less space to see this person is suffering. They're tired. They need rest and support, understanding and space. So you can notice another's pain, and thus there's more room for compassion and connection. Such a beautiful thing when we can shift from this judgment to seeing beneath the surface. There's more room for connection and compassion. And so we can move from judgment of the other, saying things like, what's your problem? You're being a horrible partner, to seeing the other. And we may choose to respond instead by saying something like, hey, you sound a little tense. Is your day going okay? Or, hey, you sound tired. Can I support you in any way? These responses are a world of a difference. In one case, you're breeding the ground for more fighting, for more freezing, for more distance and disconnection. And then with the other response, there is room for understanding the other person is starting to see they care about me. They care about me and want to help. And that is a whole other quality of connection.
And one thing, maybe one point I want to make out is like in these examples, it's like, you know, you're still reaching out and maybe making an effort and asking like, can I support you? How's your day going? Maybe you personally feel like you don't have the space to do that. Like if you feel busy, maybe perhaps too, maybe you can acknowledge like, hey, you sound a little tense. Maybe I'll call back tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, these are just some examples, and they don't always have to be, okay, I'm going to do some extra effort.
Yeah, you can have lots of options. And I'm noticing a little bit of kind of desire for movement in the group. And I'm wondering if this would be a good place to take a break.
Okay.
Why don't we take
We're about halfway.
Like a 10-minute break to stretch, go to the bathroom, whatever we need to do. And then when you come back, we can take questions and proceed. No questions? And anybody online who wants to ask any questions?
I had a question.
Okay.
This is more not concerning when you have conflict with others, but more of your inner conflict, the self-conflict, and being, you know, able to identify. When you were talking about these, a lot of mine, when I think about is my inner conflict as well, and how I interpret a lot of what happens based on others' actions. And even though I have no control over their actions, but how that internally for me, how that creates that conflict for myself.
And so do you mean, so the question is, this is about, for the people online, this is about internal conflict, and other people do things in our lives and it causes conflict within ourselves. And how do you deal with that conflict within ourselves? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. This is sharing an example recently about something he encountered at work, but I think this really goes down to taking ownership of our needs. So when somebody else is doing things that is causing our needs to not get met, and therefore it's causing all of these unpleasant feelings, maybe anger, maybe sadness, frustration, so on and so forth. Being able to feel empowered enough to, one, ask for something different from the others if it's affecting you, or two, doing something yourself to improve your situation. So for instance, if I'm not getting any appreciation at work, people aren't, what's that a good example? First of all, again, the first step is connecting with yourself. What are the feelings and needs underneath? What is it that you're wanting that you're not getting? That is the absolute first step. How does it make you feel? really understanding yourself.
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead.
I would say that when you're really trying to dig into a conflict in yourself that keeps coming up again and again, a lot of times it's almost buried, I think, because when you start looking at your feelings and needs, you can kind of instinctively throw some answers out and you're like, okay, I understand this, but there are oftentimes they're underneath them, they're still there, and they're ones that they're so buried that we've had them for so long that it's like you have to continuously do this exercise over and over again over time, and eventually, like, as you start understanding yourself and accepting those parts of yourself, you're able to go deeper and deeper, and eventually I think you can get to that point where you can see those feelings and needs that are not being met, and then you can see what you want to do about it. Then you have that choice of deciding, am I going to accept this? Am I going to do something different, that I haven't been doing? And then you're able to do that without being kind of paralyzed with those emotions. Because until you get to that point, I think emotion clouds, so much of the way we look at these situations and these relationships. And so I think it's just kind of this iterative process of getting deeper and deeper.
Are you speaking from experience?
Does it sound like it? Does it sound like it? Yeah, absolutely.
So these emotions, so just to summarize, I guess, Matt, what you're saying is sometimes some of our needs are so deeply unmet in our whole life, and that we've lived with them for so long, lived with this kind of pain for so long, that it's so buried we can't touch it anymore. And so what we do feel are all the emotions that come up when other people do things that trigger these needs of ours. And that emotion can cloud us from really seeing deeply. And so there's this really a process of like having somebody you can talk to maybe, or journaling, or really trying to understand what's at the core of everything. And then once you find out what's at the core, you can take action. Like if you realize it's a need for appreciation, maybe it's, I don't hang out with these people as much anymore. I hang out with people who appreciate me. Or maybe I speak up to these people and say, hey, I would love to have more appreciation. And when you say X, Y, and Z, I don't feel it. Can we talk about how we can address this? Or maybe it's acceptance. Like these people are never going to give me appreciation. Maybe they're my children and they don't understand. They're too young or whatever. And I'm just going to accept it, knowing that it has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with them. And so once you get to that place, there's choice.
Yeah, and you can, sometimes it's easier to accept things when you know that you're not expecting them. Like you've decided, okay, I'm not expecting it from them. I can accept that, and I'm not relying on that the way that I might have before.
Can you enlarge your screen and take off the PowerPoint?
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Sure.
I did not realize we were doing
Is that better?
There you go. Better. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
I had a question. Somebody was asking me about do you have any advice when they're trying to like communicate, but like people kind of address her like choice of rhetoric, like saying like her words, even though she's not meaning to come off like rude, that it's coming like people say, oh, that was very rude of you, or like taking what they're saying like that negative sort of light.
First of all, so much compassion for people who struggle with that. You're just trying to say what's on your mind in a way that you hope will be received by another person, and they come back and kind of maybe even surprise you and say you're being rude, and that's not your intention at all. Like I'm sure that's a painful experience. So lots of compassion for whoever's going through that. I think it comes down to whether this is a relationship that you truly care about, and if it is, are you willing to explore? And again, this is the end of today's talk. Strategies that might work, like, will it help if I don't use judgment words and I use these other words? Or will it help? Would you be willing to have more trust when I speak, that I'm not trying to be rude, I'm just trying to express myself? It really depends on the relationship. The idea, again, is when you can understand the needs. If the other person wants to feel warmth and they're not feeling it, and I want to feel ease, like I just want to be able to speak without having to worry about how I'm saying it. Once you get to that, you can open that dialogue on, okay, so what can we do so that both of our needs get met? Maybe before we talk, I tell you how much I care about you and how much this matters to me, and to please let me know if what I'm saying feels hurtful. And then I'll let you know if I can reword it in some way. So that's one strategy. It's coming up with strategies together.
Yeah, and gosh, I just lost my train of thought. But you know, when I think when we're talking about feelings and needs, you know, we're using that chart of like being up here and down here, right? Where we're making
The
judgments.
diagram.
There's the diagram, and I don't know if it's worth bringing it up, but you know, I think it's so easy to get caught up in like having arguments where they're like, it's filled with like logic, and you know, you're trying to like win the argument in a way, right? You're trying to say, no, you're wrong because of these reasons, and I'm right because of these reasons. And what we're learning and what we're trying to show is that, you know, connection, understanding comes below that, you know, comes from the feelings and needs. And if you're on this level that's, you know, on judgments, right and wrong, good and bad, you're not really able to get to that bottom part. And even though we don't have control and responsibility over other people's actions, we can still invite them to join us, you know, in that feelings and needs, you know, by and this is the next exercise that we're going to be getting into, by trying to reach that understanding ourselves and then inviting them to understand with us, to share, express ourselves, and invite them to understand us and themselves too. So I'm bungling that a little bit, but it really is just an invitation. And once we get to that point, you know, we can make that invitation, and then it's up to them if they're going to accept it or not.
I think that's a great segue into what we want to talk about next. So unless there are other questions, I can continue. Okay. So again, the invitation, almost so much of what you guys are asking about gets easier and better when we practice moving from our judgments to our feelings and needs. And that is the fundamental first step of this whole philosophy. And from that, magic can happen. More compassion opens up, more room for communication, collaboration, and creativity. Once you get to the feelings and needs, we can be creative. How do we get both of our needs met? Because both of our needs matter. And so what I would love to spend a little bit of time on is practicing translating or decoding when we hear judgmental things from others, like, wow, that was really rude what you just said, or the examples that I came up with to practice with. Let's go there real quick. Okay, so these are some examples that I came up with, and I want us to just practice. Imagine we say these words to somebody else in our life. And we say these words because we're used to speaking in these terms, but can we look deeper within ourselves to see what could be happening underneath? So for instance, if I said, I feel like I'm doing all the work in this relationship, what could I be feeling and needing by saying these kind of harsh words?
Animosity.
Animosity. What other feelings do you think we'd be feeling?
Resentment.
Resentment.
Hatred.
Hatred.
Hurts.
Disappointment.
Confused.
Loneliness.
Disappointment, confused, loneliness. Yeah, loneliness.
Overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Frustrated.
Frustrated, tired maybe. Yeah. Tired, frustrated, overwhelmed, lonely. What was the last one?
Burnt out.
Burnt out. Beautiful. These are really great examples. Let's turn now to the needs part of our page, our needs page. What needs do you think I'm trying to express by saying these words? What am I wanting more of?
Support.
Mm-hmm. Support.
Comfort.
Understanding.
Understanding.
Compassion.
Compassion.
Respect.
Respect.
Awareness.
Awareness. Maybe partnership.
Collaboration.
Collaboration, partnership.
Communication.
Communication.
Inclusion.
Inclusion. And you guys got this. You guys got this. So We could either go to our partner and say, I'm doing all the work in the relationship and you're not doing any of it. Or I could say, you know, I'm feeling lonely and tired because I really want more communication and collaboration and partnership. And would you be willing to talk about how we can have more of that in our relationship together? What about if I said, you're being so selfish? What are my feelings and needs? Feelings first. Let's start with feelings.
Anger.
Confusion, anger,
Annoyance.
Annoyance, confusion,
irritated,
irritated,
Fatigue.
fatigued,
Sadness.
sadness, yeah.
misunderstood,
Fear.
Maybe scared. Yeah, scared, like where is this relationship going? You know, I've heard this thing which really resonates with me is, you know, anytime we're feeling angry, it's a very surface level emotion, and underneath it there's grief. You know, so if I'm feeling angry right now that you're doing something that I'm interpreting as selfish, underneath there's sadness of, you know, what about me? What about other people? So anything else there?
lonely,
Lonely. What about me? What about me? So now if we switch to the needs side, what could I be needing when I say you're being selfish?
Support.
Support,
communication,
communication,
Closeness.
closeness, maybe some consideration.
comfort,
What was that?
comfort,
Comfort.
compassion,
What about to see and be seen?
yes,
To see and be seen. So yeah, again, either we say you're so selfish and we stay in that land of judgment that can lead to fight, flight, freeze, and disconnection. Or we can say, my beloved, I'm feeling lonely and just wanting to be seen right now. Would you be willing to take some time to talk about how my day went? Or whatever, right? Totally different space to connect from than using these words.
And you're still expressing yourself, but it's like you're expressing yourself in a deeper and more clear, direct way that actually can lead to a change. Like you're actually making a request.
That can lead to understanding as well. When your partner hears you say you're being selfish, they're not going to be able to understand what's going on for you beneath the surface. But if you say, I'm feeling lonely because I really want to be seen, or wanting more closeness or whatever, they have a better idea of what's happening in your heart. What about, all you do is criticize me? How many more do we have?
That's fine.
We just skipped the last one.
Okay.
Okay, I feel like we've kind of done enough. Let's do one last one, okay? I think this one might be maybe resonant with some people. You're overreacting. So if I say this to someone, you're overreacting, what am I feeling?
Tired.
frustration,
Tired, frustrated. Maybe confused. Where is this coming from? Confused.
lonely,
Lonely, that one's coming up a lot. And what do you think you're needing when you say you're overreacting to somebody? What are the needs that you're trying to meet by saying that? Or that they're not getting met by this conversation?
Connection.
Appreciation.
Understanding.
Connection, appreciation, understanding. What was that?
peace of mind,
Peace of mind.
Peace of mind. So you're just wanting some peace in this relationship. You're feeling hurt, yeah. And so you say these words, you're overreacting, which if you're wanting connection and peace, when you say the words you're overreacting, you're not going to get connection and peace. You're probably going to get the opposite of that. So Marshall used to say that all of our judgments are tragic expressions of our needs. So when we say we're overreacting, oh, somebody said self-expression in the chat as well. Yeah. When we express ourselves in this way, we're not increasing the chances that we get what we want, where we might even be decreasing it. If I want more peace and I say you're overreacting, probably not going to get more peace. It's probably going to cause even more fighting. Okay, so that was, sorry, were there any questions there? Yeah.
So that applies if we say those things to ourselves.
Yeah. Like if I tell myself you're overreacting, or I'm being so selfish, for instance, do you feel connected and warm and understanding with yourself, or are you actually distancing yourself from yourself?
Don't have your self-respect for yourself.
Yeah, there's less compassion and connection with yourself. There's judgment of yourself, and that causes distance as well. So thank you for bringing that up. This is about how we speak to ourselves as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so now I'd like to switch to an exercise called the empathy dive exercise. And for that, you'll need a sheet of paper. And this is something that you can do whenever you're struggling with interacting with another person. So this is like one of those skills you can take with you today and put into practice right away. And what we're gonna do is, if everybody has a sheet of paper, at the very,
Yeah. You can do the backside.
okay, so at the very top of that sheet, I want you to think of something that someone said to you that was difficult to hear. Just like earlier, you know, if my friend snapped at me when I asked for help, maybe he said something like, why can't you just do it yourself? So think of something that someone told you recently that was difficult to hear. And we're gonna start small. So if you think of intensity from 1 to 10, 10 being like, I wanna break up with you, or I'm not your dad, or whatever. Those are really hard to hear. So we're gonna start at a 4, a level 4. So not something that's too intense, something that happened that was difficult to hear. Any questions about that?
Does that have to be recent?
It does not have to be recent, no.
Yeah, and we invite everyone online to do this too, exercise, if you have a piece of paper or something to write on.
Okay.
Okay, looks like people are finishing that.
Okay, so you wrote something down that it was hard for you to hear, somebody told you, and it should be kind of about yourself, not about like somebody else. It should be about yourself, not somebody else. Okay, now on the left side of your page, draw a T like you see on the screen. And underneath that T, on the left side, you might have to make it bigger once you realize what we're doing, but on the left side, write my feelings, or what did I feel? And now take a moment, sitting with your feelings sheet, to think about what feelings came up for you when you heard these words spoken by this other person. So for instance, we said in our example that this person, that I felt surprised, hurt, and sad when that person snapped at me. So try to explore what you were feeling when you heard these words. Okay, so once you're done, you know, if you have 3, if you have 5, that's good. Just make sure it feels right, like you've got the major feelings down. And now think, what was I needing? On the other side of the T, what was I needing in that moment? In our example, it was support, trust, and warmth. And try to get around At least 2 or 3. You can put more if you'd like. And now look at what you wrote. Does it feel right? Does it feel complete? That that's what was happening for you in that moment? Does anybody else need some more time?
Yes.
Yes, okay. There's a couple more minutes.
Do you all need this light or okay? Do you want to put this up? Here, I need-
Anybody else need more time? Okay. All right, so that should feel complete, like you've given yourself some understanding and some support. And now let's see if there's some curiosity about the person who said these words. Let's draw another T on the right-hand side of your page or below it, whatever you'd like. And on the left of that T, let's write down what were they feeling or their feelings. And we have no idea if we were correct. We're just wondering. We're just having some curiosity. What could have been happening for them? So in our case, we guessed maybe this other person was overwhelmed, tired, and tense. What about for you? What do you think the other person was feeling when they said these words?
But you're only making an assumption.
Absolutely. This is just guessing. The only way you actually find out is by talking to them. Now we're just practicing having that curiosity about another's experience. It's a practice in curiosity.
So we're taught not to assume, so in this case we're doing the complete opposite.
You are guessing, just like if you don't know the answer on an exam, you guess. It's not assuming, it's wondering and guessing.
It may feel like a fine point, but I think there is a distinction there.
Yeah, we're definitely not assuming we know what was happening. We're just wondering and having curiosity. Maybe this was happening. So yeah, what could they have been feeling when they said these words?
It's sort of like exercising empathy towards them.
Exactly. Exercising empathy towards them. Exactly. Okay. Okay, so if we have a guess of how they must have been feeling, every time we feel something, it's because of a need that is not or not being met. That is or is not being met. So what could they have been needing that led them to feel this way, that led them to act this way? Our guess was rest, space, and support. And what about you? What is your guess for that other person's needs?
I found it very interesting that what I have on my side is what almost the same that I have on his side.
It's so crazy when that happens. We'll talk about that in a second. But it's crazy when that happens, yeah. So for those of you online, the comment was that it's really interesting that the needs that she had were the same needs that the other person had. We'll give you one more minute to finish up. I see some people are still working. One more minute. Okay. Okay, so I'm curious about how that was for you guys. Does anybody have any reflections or questions from that exercise?
I think it's easy when it's something small, but when it gets to harder problems, like when you said not good, something out of 10, it would be a lot harder to do.
Mm-hmm. So for those of you who are online, the comment was it feels easier when it's something that's small, but if it's something that's big, it would be a lot harder to do. And I can tell you that I've resolved like internal issues in doing this within minutes with some issues, and other issues I'm still working on. Like so-and-so did something to me years ago, and there's still anger, there's still resentment, there's ability that I can understand at some level, but there's still those feelings, and so I'm still working on it. So yeah, it depends on the severity of the issue, but we start small, right? We start small, and then like my friend snapped at me or my partner snapped at me, and as we strengthen these skills, we build it up to bigger things, like that person called me a racist, or said that I said or was racist to me, or you know, some even more severe things that people deal with sometimes. Like I had abuse growing up as a child, for instance. Somebody could be working on those issues. But we start small to flex these muscles of understanding and empathy and connection, and then we can build up to those bigger ones. The point of this exercise is to practice self-connection. And usually we find that we're more curious about the other person's experience after we've connected with ourselves. If we haven't had a chance to fully understand ourselves, express our pain, sometimes it can be really hard to try to hear the other person and what could have been going on for them, because we're not ready. We still have so much stirring inside of us. We're not ready to listen. And so this process is it's like a microcosm of this entire process of first what's happening inside of me, and now can I have some curiosity about what's happening inside of the other person. Were there how many of you felt just a little bit more understanding of the other person? Raise your hand, just a little bit. Most of you, okay, not all of you, but most of you. I'm hearing online as well that somebody else did feel that much more understanding. This is the process, guys. Shifting, I don't know if you can still see my screen. No. Again, it's this same idea, shifting from our judgments. They said a harsh judgment to me. How can I dig deeper to understand what was below the surface? Or I'm using a harsh judgment to judge them with. How can I dig beneath the surface? This is the process. This is the work, over and over and over again. And then our relationships transform. Any questions on that or anything else you want to share? Did anybody else experience that some of the needs that they had for themselves were the same needs that the other person had? Can you raise your hand? And anybody notice some of the similar needs? Oh, look at that. Half of you. Yeah. I hope my mom and aunt don't mind, but I want to share a quick example of something that I realized as well. When I was working on my PhD, I was so busy all the time and I felt drowning in my work. But my family is very active. We're always getting together, always having events. And so there was some family event, I've forgotten which one it was, where I came to the really tough decision that I wasn't going to be able to attend. And I got a call from my uncle saying, you know, family comes first, right? Like you can't put work in front of family. And I felt so sad, and I felt like I was really needing understanding for what I was going through. I was needing some warmth and love and belonging, feeling that I still belong even if I cannot come. And this stuck with me for a while until I learned about this process. And I explored my feelings and needs, and I explored his feelings and needs, and I realized for him, family is belonging and love and understanding. And so when I said I wasn't coming, it challenged all of those things for him. We had the same needs, and I had pain around that. And just this exercise, this T exercise, I feel so much more understanding and love and connection, compassion for all of that. And so this can be transformative when you use it regularly and practice it.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah, I have one other quick story. In my family, the avoidance conflict resolution strategy is very, very common. And so I was talking to my aunt not long ago, and I asked her what her relationship was with, with my mom and with other parts of the family. And she said, growing up, it was so important for everyone to get along, to just be able to live together, that was the focus. So they would not go deeper. They would not try and understand each other's feelings. They would not even think necessarily about their own in those relationships. And so they went years and years and years just getting along and not addressing anything deeper. And the result is, she says, she just didn't feel like she knew them. Like she just didn't feel like she had a true relationship, with her family. And that's the risk, I think, that we run in our relationships with others and with ourselves when we don't pursue this exercise and make it a regular practice.
Yeah, I understand my uncle so much more now. At least I'm wondering, again, back to making assumptions. I have to go ask him if that's actually what's happening inside of him when he says those things. But I feel closer to him as a result. I feel like I know him better. So.
I see a question in the back.
I was just wondering, how do you do this with somebody who's not necessarily in the right state of mind, like someone that's been an addict, and so they're on a substance or under the influence of alcohol? Like, how would you do the T method if you can't because they're not sober?
How do you do the T exercise with somebody who's not sober, who has addictions? So first of all, this is an exercise we do on our own in an introspective way. It doesn't necessarily involve the other person unless you want to ask them. But every single thing we do is to meet an underlying need, even our addictions. We're addicted to the alcohol, their drugs, or whatever it is, because it's serving us in some way. It's helping us meet some need. And if we can understand what needs are being met by this person's behavior, then we can have more compassion for them, and we can approach them not from a place of judgment, but like, hey, I get it. You go to you drink every night, I get it, because it just sets you free, right? It gives you freedom, it gives you peace of mind. Is that what it is? And now you're listening to this person with curiosity rather than judgment. You have now opened the lines for communication because they see that you truly care. You're not there to judge, you're there to understand. Any other questions?
Yeah, right here.
Okay, so if the individual still gets offended, even if they see that you compassion and you have a voice tone that is you're being calm, what if they still don't respond to that?
So the question is, what if you use all these skills, you approach it with compassion, with curiosity, with care, and the other person is still responding in they're getting offended, they're getting distant, they want to fight or flee or freeze, whatever those strategies are. What do you do then? I'm going to pause for a second. Sometimes we have been so chronically dismissed, we have been starved for empathy, we have been fighting all of our lives in our relationships. We haven't been taught a different way of relating to each other. Sometimes it takes a while to get to that place of connection and understanding. Sometimes it takes a while for me to trust that you really do care, that you're not just using words that you picked up in a workshop, that you actually do care. And so sometimes it can just take time because, for instance, if I'm the person who, no matter how kindly you approach me, I get defensive or I fight or whatever, my need for trust could be so chronically starved that I haven't had trust in my life from my other members of my family or from other partners or whatever, that it's going to be really hard for me to finally trust that you actually do care. So it may just be a matter of patience. It may be underlying issues from like growing up. So much of how we grew up influences the way that we react to people today. And so, yeah, it may just take time and even more understanding and even more digging deeper.
Yeah, and like I think we mentioned, before, it is still a choice for you as well. Is this a relationship that you want to invest that time and have that patience to get to, you know, whatever point that you want, or do you not want to? You know, ultimately that power is yours.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes what I do is I empty myself. I hope you understand what I'm saying. I empty myself so I will not be bothered. That will not hinder me how to respond to my dad.
Sometimes you empty yourself so that you aren't troubled by the way they respond to you.
Correct.
It sounds like maybe you enter this place of mindfulness so that whatever they say back to you, you're able to see with peace.
Yes.
Is that what you mean? Yeah. And that doesn't work for you?
It works, but not the other person.
It could also be that it's time for you to express too. You know, communicating again, getting in touch with yourself and saying, you know, this is really hard for me. I really want to show you that I care and that I love you and that I'm here. And I'm noticing that when I approach it in this way, I'm not getting the response I'm expecting, which is trust in return. What is missing? What can I do? Or what can we do together to rebuild that trust? And again, it's a choice. It's a choice of whether you want to invest that effort or not.
Yeah, and actually the next section that we're gonna touch on is more about making those kinds of requests of people in our relationship.
Yeah, maybe we should actually take that as a segue to continue then and see what questions come up at the end of the session, because I think we have 30 minutes left together. Is that okay? Should we continue?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you guys for these amazing questions. Okay, so the next section is about making requests. And again, the requests that we want to make, we want to come from this space, feelings and needs, to enable more understanding and compassion. And so imagine we've gone through this whole process. Let's go back a little bit. We've gone through this whole process where we've understood the other person was feeling overwhelmed and tired and tense. They were needing rest, space, and support. And we are now ready to approach them about it. It's the next day. We want to ask them about what happened yesterday when I asked you for help and you snapped at me. You're ready to talk about it. And make a request to get your needs met too, that your needs matter. You wanted warmth and support and understanding. You didn't get it. And so now you want to ask for it from this person, this partner, or your friend, or whoever it is. The first thing we need to do is to understand truly and deeply that both of your needs matter. Your friend's needs for rest and support and space matter, and your own need for warmth and understanding and support, both of them matter. Nobody is more important than the other. That's one of the biggest tenets of NVC. Every human being and their needs matters. So once we get in touch with that truly, not just on the surface, but truly, like, I care about my friend. Assume this is a partner. I care about my husband, and his need for rest matters. Once we can get to that place, just like my need for warmth and support matters, once we get to that place, we can prepare to make our request to just say, this is my husband. Preparing to make a request to my husband. So the first step is making sure you understand yourself. What was happening for you in that moment? What were your needs and your feelings? So in this case, we've connected to the idea that I want to be able to trust that I can express myself to my husband without being snapped at. I want warmth and understanding in our relationship. And that wasn't met by the way he responded to my request for help. So really understanding where you're coming from.
And this is through the empathy dive.
Yeah, the empathy dive exercise we just did was connecting to yourself and having empathy for yourself. The next thing we want to do is to have some kind of a grounding practice. Anytime we have communications with others where we're bringing up requests about telling people I would love you to do things differently, things might get a little bit heated. Things might get elevated. So what kind of a practice can we use? One very powerful practice is just pausing. Power of the pause. It's a whole totally underrated tactic is just pausing. Before you spew things out of your mouth, just pause and connect to yourself. Another practice people have is breathing, paying attention to your breathing, just taking a moment saying, hold on, I need a second, taking a breath or two. Another practice, and I'm guessing the Infinite Love community would be comfortable with this, is having some kind of a mantra that you're repeating to yourself. I am peace, I am love, or whatever it is, kind of repeating it to yourself. But making sure you have that ready before you go into these conversations, which can be difficult. And the third thing, and I have an asterisk next to it because it's that important, is going in with this intention of care and understanding. We're not going in to make the other person do what we want them to do. We're not going in to change anybody. We're going with an intention to understand the other person, to care about them, and to understand myself and to care about myself. Having faith that if we come in with that intention, we will find a solution together. So it's not, if you go in thinking, I'm going into this conversation because I want them to change the way they are, they're going to sense that energy. They're going to sense that energy and the communication will not be the same. If you go in instead with curiosity about true curiosity about the other person and care for the other person, the energy will be completely different and the grounds will be more ripe for actually understanding.
Yeah, and I just want to make one point. I know we were talking earlier about whether or not the empathy dive involves assumptions. We don't want them to be an assumption because when you have an assumption, you're going in assuming into this conversation, assuming like you know what they're feeling and what they're needing. We don't, right? There's no way we can know that. But by doing that exercise and approaching it with curiosity, we're guessing, because then when we go to that conversation, we can say, okay, this is what we think, but we really want to know. We want to understand you. And that's how you get to the next level. So I think that's actually the next one. So once you've got those pieces in place, you can actually have the conversation with your partner. And this is, I think what Matt was saying is, this is something that Marshall Rosenberg said over and over and over again. Connection before correction. Connection before correction. So saying things like, I'm wondering, were you tired and just needing support? And that's what caused you to kind of say those words to me. The other person might say, no, I wasn't tired. I was angry because I had a horrible day at work and everybody's blah, blah, blah. And then you reflect, oh, you were angry because you were needing more understanding at work. And it's a conversation that goes back and forth for you to reflect back what you're hearing from the other person to truly understand what was happening for them. So all the guessing and the assumptions go out because you're actually having that conversation of trying to understand that other person. Connection before correction. And guys, this part is an entire skill of how to give empathy, how to reflect, how to get to deeper level of understanding. And these are the things that we can practice if we decide we want to. So the first step is truly understanding the other person. The next step is being vulnerable and sharing what you discovered were your feelings and needs. I hear you were angry because you were needing understanding at work. Are you curious about what I was going through? And then you can share, I felt kind of sad and hurt because I was needing warmth and support when I came to you with this. And this is, you really have to embrace your vulnerability here because you're admitting to the other person that they matter to you. The way they treat you matters to you. It affects you. And there's some humility in this, saying, I needed support from you and I didn't get it. So there's some vulnerability that can come up from that.
What if you ask them if they're interested and they straight up tell you no?
Interested in what's going on with me?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a whole other topic. It's called finding the needs beneath the no. Hearing the pleas behind the no, there's a skill for that. If they're saying no to you, they're saying yes to another need. So it could be that they're still tired. It could be that they don't feel safe right now to have this conversation. So when we hear no's, anytime we make requests, we have to be ready to hear no. And that no is a yes to some other need. They're saying no to you, but they're saying yes to some other need. And those needs matter. Everybody's needs matter. So The whole practice of being able to hear no is another skill.
Is that your next one?
Yeah, and so the last one is that you make a request that meets both needs. And this is where the creativity comes in. If I was needing warmth and my partner was needing rest, can I come up with something that could get both of our needs met? And this I haven't showed you yet, but this is one example that I came up with. So I want to feel warmth in our interactions, and I also want to honor your need for space and rest. So both of our needs matter, right? How do we get both of those met? I'm wondering, if I ask you for help again and you're too tired, would you be willing to tell me that you care about me, but you're feeling low energy right now? Because I think that if we can do that, I'll remind myself, you know, I'm kind of sensitive about these things. I want to know that you care. And if you tell me you care about me, but you're feeling low energy right now, that might help me feel that warmth, and I'll be able to give you that space and rest. Is that something that would work for you? Again, the other person could say no, or they could say, you know, that doesn't work, but maybe we could do this instead. Maybe there's a code word or something that I say, or whatever works with you and your partner. But do you see how this is a space of collaboration? How do we get both of our needs met? We're opening the room for creativity to come up with a way we can both agree on the next time something like this comes up. You want to add anything? Any questions about that before we dive into one other concept about making requests of yourself?
So that part, when you were talking about, is it talking, when you were talking about meeting both needs, would it be something like reflect on the benefits for both? In other words, speaking about how it's beneficial, what is beneficial mutually.
Yes, yes.
So that there is a better way, not necessarily a compromise, because then, like you said, both sides lose, but it's a collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
We're able to see how both sides benefit from doing such and such practice versus saying you do this and we do this, and then that's how we meet in you know, halfway point.
Exactly. So for the people online, we're kind of just rephrasing. So when we say make a request that meets both needs, in other words, we're trying to find a way to proceed that benefits both parties, that both has their needs met. It's a win-win. I get my need for warmth because you're reminding me that you do care about me, and you get your need for space because now I can say, okay, I'll come back and ask you for help later, or I'll call my mom for help, or I'll call my brother for help, you know, and you can get your space and rest. So yeah, really honoring the needs that both of us have, and using creativity to come up with a strategy to meet both of those sets of needs. Any other reflections or questions?
I'll just add one other thing here. And, you know, when you make a request like this, and you can maybe imagine hearing it, that solution, that request may not be something that the other person is willing to agree to. They may say no.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when that request is made in this way as an invitation, then the other person in a relationship is that much more likely to join you and say, okay, this doesn't work for me, but let me think about what will. And maybe the answer is, you know, maybe tomorrow we'll spend more time together tomorrow, or you know, or like, actually I'm busy, but my brother, you know, is available, or someone else. Like, they can actually help you meet your need, even if they themselves aren't feeling like they can.
Yeah.
Which can, you know, is a wonderful space to be into, and very different from just arguing and feeling like, no, you have to do this.
Thank you for bringing that up, Matt, because that's the whole point. This is such a different space from you're being selfish. It's your job as my husband to support me. I don't care if you're tired at work, blah, 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 blah. Instead, hey, I care that you're tired. I care that you need rest. And I also want warmth in this relationship. Can we figure this out together? Now, there is this image on Facebook, I should have brought it up, of like kind of unproductive conflict where there's two people yelling at each other. and the problem's in the middle and they're just yelling at each other, trying to force the problem to work, that's unproductive conflict. The productive conflict is when the problem's over here and you two are holding hands saying, this is the problem. How do we figure this out together? Collaboration. That's where we can get to when we live in the land of feelings and needs. There's yes.
Only because I've tried this in practice. And I know that it's something that we see, like, for example, perhaps you're in that mindset and that other person is not. And you hear that no, like even when you make a suggestion, and like you said, you're prepared to hear that no. If that is the case, and you already kind of have that assumption, would it be best to say, it sounds like you're having a problem with this? Just acknowledge that their feelings so that they can express how they're feeling without you making an assumption.
Yeah. You absolutely just ask them, can you tell me what was going on when this happened? Like, what was happening underneath? The stuff that we're learning is kind of like the nuts and bolts. The way you put it into your life, it has to feel natural in that context, right? So if it feels more natural and like it's going to be received better to say, can you tell me what was going on for you when you said, can I just do it myself? That's absolutely another way of doing it instead of assuming, making guesses.
Yeah, I actually wanted to back off of like what she was talking about. Like, if and it's more addressed to you because you were the more like accommodating person. So when you're already feeling like you're doing a lot in the relationship, and naturally you start feeling a little bit resentful, like they're not pulling their weight, and you want things to change, and you come to the table and you say, okay, like, you know, maybe I was being judgmental and I did this wrong, or like these are areas I want to work with. And what if essentially the other person's just like, yep, that's true, you did that, and it's good that you're willing to change, and that's kind of it.
You can ask for what you want. You can say, I'm working on myself. I would really like to explore how we can do this together. I would love to, I mean, whatever it is, like, you know, I noticed the other day, I wish I had a more specific example to work with to answer this question. Let me back up a little bit. If the other person, the question is, what if if you come up and you're vulnerable and saying, I want to work on this about myself, I want to work on that about myself, and the other person's like, yeah, you should work on that, that's a good idea, and then goes about their way, you can ask for what you want and say, you know, I notice sometimes that I would love to connect at a deeper level and we're not able to. Would you be willing to work on this with me, because I want more connection in this relationship. I want more warmth and understanding, and I feel like I'd be so much closer to you if we can connect in this way. Always coming from your feelings and needs, not saying you are obtuse and you don't have depth and I want you to have more depth. No. What are my needs and feelings that I want to get met? And coming from there, you know, I would really like more warmth and depth in these conversations. Would you be willing to talk about how we can do that? Because I have a friend who's been doing it, and I've been seeing really great things in the relationship, and it's exciting to me to know that that can be possible for us too. Can we talk about that? Because I love you and I want this for us. Coming from what am I needing and what am I feeling, rather than putting judgments on them. You can ask, and we make requests. You can ask for these things, and it's your right to ask for these things because your needs matter. That also leads to one other point before I move it over to Matt. Okay, on that topic of getting needs met through partners, I am so happy with this man and this marriage, and we've been together for like 3 years, but before we got together, I was really hesitant. Sorry, but he knows this already. I was hesitant because I always believed growing up that somehow my spouse was going to bring me purpose. I am going to find someone who has an orphanage in India, and I'm going to join him and we're going to go save Indian babies together. Or he's going to be like, not whatever. Like, so I'm going to find purpose through my relationship. And when I met Matt, he was like, I just want to be happy and have a family and raise kids and contribute to the world in that way. And that was such a big block for me. Is he the right one for me? Because we don't want to change the world together. which is not because here we are like sitting together. But yeah, like he doesn't want to change the world, and I do. Is this right? And then I went to a nonviolent communication workshop, and we looked at this list of needs, and we were talking about how we can have different strategies in our lives to meet our different needs. We can have different strategies to meet our different needs. They also made us do this exercise where I went down the needs list and I wrote down all the needs of mine that were met and that were not met, just in general in my life. And I noticed under the connection column, acceptance, affection, appreciation, care, closeness, belonging, intimacy, inclusion, all of this stuff was all completely met for me. And I realized, oh my God, all of these needs of mine for connection are being met by this wonderful man. I can find my need for purpose somewhere else. I can find my need for purpose somewhere else. Your partner does not have to meet all of your needs. And we, especially in this day and age, we have this fantasy of finding the perfect person who's going to meet all of our needs at all times. That is unreasonable, unrealistic, and can lead to a lot of pain. So, for instance, I decided that I'm going to get involved in prison work. I'm going to get involved with meditation groups and things like that. And there I was finding my purpose. And look, I pulled him along in this. And it's because I invited him and I accepted him for who he was and the beautiful human being he is and all the needs he meets for me. And so I think that's also really important, is our partner doesn't have to meet all of our needs. We decide, you know, how we get those needs met.
Yeah, and you know, I feel very fortunate too, and happy about all of this. And we're talking about partners, but the same thing is true of friends,
yes, yeah.
family, parents, acquaintances. It's the exact same thing. You know, meeting, getting our needs met by any one person, it's a strategy that may work, but it's unlikely, it's unreasonable. And so we have, you know, everyone else we can look to, or other activities. You know, we have unlimited possibilities to meet those needs.
And there's one person in my life who I've always wanted acceptance and warmth from, and I haven't been getting it. And through this work, I realized I can release this person from that responsibility. I don't have to get acceptance and warmth from this specific person. I can get it from my friends. I can get it from my husband. I can get it from my mom, whatever it is. So we have power to say, if I'm not getting these needs met here, where else can I look to get those needs met? It doesn't all have to be from the person that we want it to be or the thing that we want it to be. I think that's a big...
This is applause time for you. And for sharing that. And I'd say very amazing. Would this also
we have 10 minutes.
Self? Would also this be for the self, for yourself as a person, not put that on you as well, that you don't have to meet all those needs, so that you don't have that inner disappointment, that all those needs that you feel, you don't even know, but you feel that that person, your partner, needs that you're not meeting, that it's not necessarily.
It's not all your responsibility. You can say, like Matt, Dungeons and Dragons. He plays Dungeons and Dragons at this board game place. I can tell him I'm not into that nerdy stuff. And he can go get those needs met without me. He still wants me to come along sometimes, but we can say it's not my responsibility to meet all of your needs. You can also look elsewhere, and I want you to, because I want those needs matter and I want them to be met for you. Exactly.
And sometimes I think you can also be surprised. I know, you know, earlier when we were dating, when Sunaina was first going to these nonviolent communication workshops, she invited me to attend too. And, you know, I'm like, you know, what's nonviolent communication? You know, that sounds so strange. And, but I went and I started to, you know, understand like, hey, this can help me too. And you know, and now here we are. And it's such a big part of our lives because Sunaina made that invitation to me that I wouldn't have thought of it on my own. And so that's the kind of power that we all have, is to make those invitations.
Make the invitations. They might say no, but you can make the invitations. We have 8 minutes left, and I really want to go over one last concept. Do you guys mind if I finish up?
We have 8 minutes, but you know, we're willing to. We're happy to stay a little bit longer, take more questions if you guys are interested. You know, you're welcome, of course, to go. scheduled time does end in about 7 or 8 minutes, but we invite you to stay if you'd like.
Do you want to just quickly talk about the making requests of yourself with your work example?
Sure.
And then I'll show you guys, and then I'll have some feedback forms for you guys. But the other thing that we wanted to end with is very similar to what we've been talking about right now, of taking ownership of your needs and figuring out how to get them met, even if they're not. Anyway, why don't you tell your story?
Okay. And this gets back really to what we were just talking about, and really I think the core idea is having ownership of our feelings and the requests that we can make. Just our approaches to our relationship. And we've been talking about relationships with partners and friends, but my example is with work and with my colleagues. And really what it comes down to is that I've been at an agency for several years now, and I realized that my need for appreciation, like, okay, let me back up. The company I work at has been growing rapidly, and people have been getting promoted like crazy. Like just the other day, someone I worked with, who was an intern after I started, has now been promoted to a very similar, maybe the same level as me, and that's been really hard, for me to see that change, and not feel like I have the opportunity to grow, and so then that's been a challenging thing, and I've been really struggling with it. And one of my manager kind of approached me recently, and she said, it seems like you've been really down. What can I do to help you feel better? How can I help you feel happy at work the way that maybe you did before? And I really thought about it. I thought, what request can I make? Here she was coming to me, willing to do, what I wanted, and I couldn't think of a single thing, because the more I thought about it, the more I realized that she and all of my colleagues were already doing a lot for me. In my mind, I didn't feel appreciated. My need for appreciation was not being met, and I felt like I felt like that wouldn't be true until I got promoted. Until I got promoted, I just wouldn't be appreciated by the company. And so when my manager came to me and asked me, and I couldn't think of anything, I realized, it has nothing to do with them, everything to do with me. Because when people come to me and ask me for help, when they compliment the work that I'm doing, I'm already getting that appreciation. It's up to me to recognize it and accept it. And that was like invisible to me. It was like I just didn't even recognize that possibility for months and maybe even years. But when I really looked at it and I really did these exercises, then I could see that this was the case. And it's been, so gratifying to reach that understanding and acceptance.
And so the idea is he was really wanting appreciation at work. He wasn't getting it because he wasn't getting promoted. And he realized that he wanted to make a request of himself, to stop seeing appreciation only through promotion, but through all the little acts that people do on a daily basis for him. So he can make a request for himself. I'm going to notice every day one thing that somebody does for me that is sharing with me that I'm appreciated. Like my friend leaving me a piece of chocolate, or somebody saying thank you for some work I did. So he's making a request of himself to pay more attention to the little signs of appreciation that might not be a promotion, but is still appreciation.
Yeah, and just in making the invitation to myself has really led to a big change in how I do feel appreciated at work. And it's made a big difference. And again, that's just the power that we have for ourselves. And it's been a wonderful thing.
So you can make requests of others, and you can also make requests of yourself. That's kind of the whole point of that last story. Sorry, we rushed through it. I want to invite you guys, if you want to learn more, Matt and we've got a podcast that talks about using these practices in daily life. We are working on putting together an online course to practice more of this stuff. We've got blog posts and things like that. If you go to growmorejoy.com and subscribe, we will send you a list of resources for further learning. We've also got some books. My mom was saying that you're welcome to purchase if you'd like a book on nonviolent communication. And oh, please, before you leave, I know time is almost up, but before you leave, we would love for you to fill out a feedback form so that we know how to better support people in the future and even support you. And I'm gonna, for the people who are online, I'm gonna share that link. If you're willing, please, please, it's just 3 questions. We would love to know what you thought about this and what you would want more of and what you would want less of. So I'm sharing that in the chat right now. Okay.
Yeah, and feel free to spend as much or as little time as you feel called to.
Yes. Anything else,
Yeah,
Mom?
So,
or
Yeah, we're in the control room.
we can take questions.
where is the? Yeah. So thank you guys for your presence. We're going to be around. If you have any other questions, we're happy to chat.
Questions?
Well, thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a question for you guys. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just curious, so if when we're using these techniques, and we're talking to other people, you said that there's a whole nother thing to do with no's. If we hear no, is there, like a way that we can reassess our needs and their needs so that we're not feeling bad about it later?
Oh, yeah, sure. So it's the phrase that Marshall uses is, what's the need behind the no? Again, it's another way, it's not taking things personally, knowing that everything that people do has everything to do about them and not about you. So if somebody's saying no to something that you're asking, they might have another need. So for instance, I don't know if I shared, but Matt and I actually teach this at Donovan Correctional Facility at a prison nearby. And we work with like 25 men teaching this stuff once a week. And one of the men said, I really, really want my wife to read this book so that we can be on the same page and connect. But every time I asked her to do it, she says, no, that's not, I don't want it. I don't want it. And he was stuck on that and he was frustrated. He's like, why wouldn't she want to do this? Blah, blah, blah. And so there was this process of what is the need behind the no? If she's saying no to reading this book, what needs are she saying yes to? And that's the question. What needs are they saying yes to? In this case with the other woman, I think she was needing, we were just talking about this, she was probably needing ease and trust. She was also needing kind of reassurance that they were okay. And the fact that he was asking her to read this book really worried her and made her think that something was wrong with their relationship. So she needed reassurance that everything's okay. I just want us to go even deeper. So the question is, your question was, what do we do so that we don't feel bad when we hear a no? It's to look for the need behind the no and to not take anything personally. Because those needs behind the no, they matter as well. And there's actually exercises you can do where you can practice hearing no. You can do a dyad practice where the other person pretends to be your partner and just says no. And you just have to practice what it's like to let that roll off your back and look more deeply at what's underneath the no. It's all of these little things, as you practice, they get easier.
Thank you.
I have another question.
Okay.
So kind of going back to our exercise and like what you were saying about your uncle.
Yeah.
Like you did a certain action, right? And like your personal reality kind of said that like, hey, this is your reality. And then like your uncle took that same action and through his reality, it was a totally different thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or in fact, just the opposite, right? As your reality. And so it's like, I kind of got to a block because that was very similar to what I wrote about. And that kind of just, what if that like, you know, to that person, their reality is the truth. And like, what can you do if like, you know, that's their truth and like they are not like you know, like it's their reality, but like for some people, like they think that their reality is the objective reality. That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So one response to that is you don't have to do anything. you can just know that they see the world differently than you do. And next time they say something like that, it bothers you less because you realize where they're coming from. It's just the way they see the world. You don't take it personally. So one answer is you don't have to do anything. But if you want there to be more understanding, because I don't see my uncle that often, you know, I didn't do anything about it. But if this is somebody you see often and you care, like really care about making things better, start with empathy for them. Like, oh, this is hard for you to hear because you really value family. You really value togetherness and connection. Is that right, Uncle? Is that what's going on? And then he can tell you, no, it's just that it's wrong to not put family first. It's right, you know, and you can just, and then it's the process of empathy. Once they feel heard, like, oh, is that what it is, Uncle? Am I understanding now? You say, yeah, that's it. When you get to that place where they feel heard and understood, it is magic what happens. They just stop talking. Like, it's like this, they might go on and on and on. And then once you hear them, they're like, yeah, that's it. And they stop. This happened to me in prison once. There's this guy who talks so much all the time. And I gave him empathy once. He's like, yeah, that's it. And I was shocked that he had nothing else to say after that. But they stop because they feel heard. We all so want to feel heard. Once that other person feels heard and empathized with, they may have space to listen to you and say, would you be interested in, can I share what's coming up for me when I hear that? And then you can explain your side. By that time, their defenses are down because they felt heard. They felt understood. They feel like you actually do care. And then you can communicate much more effectively than when you're in this place of, but that's just the way you see it. You know how I see it differently.
Okay, so like I always think like, oh, you're supposed to take turns. So you should go like 50-50.
So all we're doing is waiting for the other person to stop talking so that we can talk, right?
Being an active listener is very difficult. It's something you really have to practice.
And it's possible. It's difficult, but it's possible. And it's so beautiful, guys. The thing about this practice, it has made me fall in love with humanity.
Oh, God.
I was raised very differently with my religion, Hinduism and stuff. You know, we talk about people are doing good karma or they're doing bad karma. They're doing good things or bad things. If I do these things, I'm bad. If I do these things, I'm good. I have totally shifted my mentality and I just see the beauty in being human. All of us are doing the best we can, the best we know how to get our needs met. And the more we can listen in that way, listen for feelings and needs, listen underneath the surface, the more we get in contact with that, the easier it becomes. And there's just so much love possible from that perspective. Any other questions?
Can I ask one more thing? At the beginning, I said, how do I deal with anxiety with conversation? I just wanted to ask that again because it never really got covered.
Yeah. Dealing with anxiety. Again, first is to understand where their anxiety comes from. I can tell you that when I used to be, and I'm still afraid of conflict in some ways, I've gotten much better, but I would pay attention, I would notice the thoughts that are going through my head. And for me, when I'm in conflict with someone, I'm realizing what I'm telling myself is soon they're going to decide they don't want to be my friend anymore. Like when I'm in conflict with Matt at the early part of a relationship, I would just be so scared that he's going to decide he doesn't want to be with me anymore. So there's this underlying fear that when we're in conflict, what do we think is going to happen? What is that underlying fear? And for me, it was the person's going to decide they're going to judge me as not worthy and they're not going to want to be with me anymore. I remember we bought a house recently and we had an argument after we bought the house and I was like, oh my God, how are we going to do this? We just bought a house together. Like, doesn't this mean we're going to like split up and buy a house together? And it was just a fight. But I was so scared because I had this underlying belief. So it's really understanding what your underlying belief is. And for me, when I'm in a conflict with Matt now, I remind myself, just because we're in a conflict doesn't mean he's going to leave me. Just because we're in a conflict doesn't mean he doesn't care about me. And I even ask him, Matt, can you please tell me that you love me right now? And he tells me because he knows that that's my underlying fear. Like, remind me that even when you're angry at me, you still love me. So it's all about understanding the underlying fear. What is coming up for you with conflict? Figuring out ways to remind yourself during the conflict that your worst case scenario is likely not going to happen. And seeing conflict as an opportunity for connection. When we get into fights, oh, this is an opportunity for us to understand each other in a way we haven't in the past. How do we get there? How do we go deeper? So all of those things can help us
Yeah, and I would also encourage you to do that empathy dive. I mean, you know, half of it is for yourself, and that's really all you need if you're dealing with anxiety. You know, instead of filling in a blank of what someone else said, think about what that fear is and what you're telling yourself, and then go through that exercise, and that may help you understand, you know, yeah, what your fears are, what is causing that anxiety, and what you can do then to try and address them.
And it just does sound like if you need help with that, it just sounds like having a conversation with somebody who can listen with empathy and help you get deeper to get to that place. Whether it's a good friend that you trust, honestly, a therapist like that, they're amazing. They do such amazing things. Things like that, but it's all about understanding where that anxiety is coming from, I think. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
And I want to make one other point about the empathy dive. You know, we're using it, you know, as an exercise to review something that has already happened. But like, as you get used to doing it, as you get more practice, you can do it in your head, like as things are happening. We kind of, you know, talk about it like it's jujitsu or, you know, kung fu. It's like a martial art.
NBC Kung Fu, when you can do it in the moment of something happening.
Because you're translating in your mind, how am I feeling? What am I needing? How are they, you know, what are they possibly feeling and what are they needing? And then you can ask them, you know, you can, and create those invitations then that in that moment, in that discussion can lead to greater understanding and connection.
Okay, question over there.
It was just like bouncing off of her anxiety question. I was just wondering, what if their underlying fear is valid? Like yeah.
Oh
like,
man, what if their underlying fear is valid? What if Matt will leave me?
Yeah,
we're fighting.
That works if the premise is that the underlying fear is unlikely to happen or unreasonable. But if the underlying fear is a rational, like, option, what then?
Yeah, yeah.
It is what it is.
But
I would want that itself sounds like an issue. If you're gonna leave me because we're in a fight, I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
Like if you want to leave when we fight, what is happening inside of you that would lead you to take such a drastic step? I want to talk about that and understand where that's coming from. That's like a whole other
Yeah.
It's more of the fear of the unknown, what might or might not happen.
Yeah. Yeah, talk about it.
Yeah, and it sounds like that's like, you know, we were talking about on a scale of 1 to 10, that sounds like it's closer to the high end. Yeah. And I think to get to that level, you really also have to work on that self-empathy first, you know, so you can approach it with curiosity and that desire for connection, because it's so easy, you know, when it's like the stakes feel really high, to feel triggered. And then before you know it, you're like yelling.
Spewing judgments and yelling. Yeah. And get support, guys, get support. There's so many online resources. We're going to be creating online resources. A lot of this is for us to do together, not alone. So know that as well, that you can seek out support for these tougher conversations if they have to happen.
Is that it?
Oh, if you want.
You have questions? One more.
Yes.
I'm just curious, what's your PhD in?
Oh, completely kind of unrelated. It's consumer behavior. I teach at a university. It's basically psychology within the business field. And luckily I've been able to start bringing some of this stuff into my classrooms at the request of my chair. So I'm very happy that my worlds are colliding. But
and it's because you made that request.
I made that request, yeah. Thank you all so much for joining us and for giving us your attention and trust and time.